Grow tents are awesome, but they need to be ventilated right. The most important thing is to extract the hot air away, not just out of the tent itself, but out of the room the tent is situated in, right out to the outside world via some flexible ducting. These days, most grow tents have their extraction fan positioned in the roof. This is preferable because you can remove the hottest air and it makes for easier positioning of the extraction fan. It basically just sits on top, sucking side down. Now, many growers hang their carbon filter from the roof inside the tent and connect it to their extraction fan with a short length of flexible ducting. Always secure your carbon filter before hanging your grow lights. It's so much easier that way. Trust me. So, now that you've got hot air being filtered and extracted out of your grow tent, what's next? Well, smaller grow tents can replace that extracted air with fresh, cool air via passive air intakes with defensive bug meshes. Just leave the flaps open and the good old atmospheric pressure will do the rest. Now be sure to close any spare duct ports by pulling the strings taut for maximum bug protection. Larger grow tents require active air intakes. Now simply use a slightly smaller inline fan than your extraction fan and rig it up so that it pushes fresh air through one of the lower position duct ports. Now, if at all possible, I highly recommend connecting it to pull air through an intake filter like this so that bugs, pollens, mold, and mildew spores are captured before they enter your garden. Of course, you need to buy the correct size fans and filters for your particular grow tent. Now, this is easy to do. You measure the length, width, and height of your tent in feet. This gives you the total air volume of your grow tent in cubic feet. For example, a 6-foot wide by 8-foot long by 6-foot high grow tent is 6 times 8 times 6, or 288 cubic feet. You need an extraction fan capable of removing at least that amount of air every minute. In fact, you should add at least 25% to this number to factor in any resistance from your carbon filter and ducting. Choosing the right size fan and filter is important. Let's look at some more specific examples of fan and filter combos for your common size grow tents along with any other handy grow gear. This Sun Hut Blackout 20. It measures just 2 by 2 feet and is 5.3 feet tall. Remember our easy math. 2 times 2 times 5.3 equals 21.2 cubic feet. Multiply that figure by 1.25 to allow for air resistance, and that gives us our minimum CFMs of 26.5. CFM stands for cubic feet per minute. So for the Sun Hut Blackout 20, you just need a small extraction fan. The Hurricane 4-inch inline fan is more than sufficient as it offers 171 CFMs. You definitely want to connect it to a fan speed controller such as the Mercury 2 or Spartan by Titan Controls. As for the carbon filter, in such a tight space you need something super compact like this Fresh Filter 4-inch by 20-inch Low Pro, as it can handle and filter odors and particulates out of your extraction air up to 125 CFMs. So a fan speed controller really is a must. Incidentally, this exact same configuration would also work for some of the larger Sun Hut Blackout models, namely the 35, 40, 50, and 70. Okay, moving on to some larger tents. How about the Sun Hut Blackout 100? Yes, as the name suggests, it's 100 cubic feet, or 100.4 to be exact, measuring 3.9 feet times 3.9 feet times 6.6 feet. So our minimum extraction fan requirement here is 100.4 times 25%, or 126 CFMs. I definitely check out something like the Hyperfan 6-inch digital mixed flow fan for a setup like this. Sure, it pulls 315 CFMs, more than you might need, but the built-in speed controller gives you the ability to dial it down a little and some wiggle room for ambient temperature spikes in the summer months. Now, ideally, I'd pair this with a fresh 6-inch by 16-inch filter rated up to 400 CFMs. Note that this configuration would also work for Sun Hut Blackout models 160 and 200, but I would recommend adding a 4-inch air input fan connected to a 4-inch fresh intake filter rather than relying on passive air input. If you're using large air-cooled reflectors, consider the fresh skinny filter if space is tight. Right, on to the big guys. The Sun Hut Blackout 410 measures 7.9 feet by 7.9 feet by 6.6 feet. That's a whopping 411.9 cubic feet. Minimum CFMs, 515. But always shoot for more, especially if your fan comes with a built-in speed controller. My recommendation for this tent, the 8-inch Hyperfan. I love the Hyperfans because they're super compact and shift more air using fewer watts. Kind of a no-brainer. The 8-inch Hyperfan can extract up to 710 CFMs. As far as carbon filters go, the natural choice is something like the 8-inch Fresh Filter. It measures 8 inches by 24 inches, rated for 750 CFMs. I'd partner it with a 6-inch Hyperfan connected to a 6-inch Fresh Intake Filter to blow fresh air into this tent. If that's still not big enough for you, then consider the SunHut Blackout 630, 9.8 feet by 9.8 feet by 6.6 feet. That's 633.9 cubic feet and a minimum of 792 CFMs. Now this beast could take 4 1,000-watt grow lights, but you'll definitely need some serious extraction power. Personally, I wouldn't risk anything less than a 10-inch hyper fan at 1,065 CFMs connected to the 10-inch fresh filter, rated for up to 1,400 CFMs. As for air input, go for the 8-inch hyper fan. The SunHut Fortress 730 is a slightly larger area at 730 cubic feet. It measures 10 by 10 by 7.3. You could use the same configuration for this grow tent too. If you go any larger than this, there are grow tents twice this size on the market. Then I recommend multiple extraction fans and multiple inputs. Remember to move the air inside your grow tent with oscillating fans. Position them optimally so that they blow air in between your plant canopy and the grow lights, rather than blowing directly on your plants themselves. Finally, a thermostatically controlled fan speed controller like the Mercury 2 or Spartan really is a must, you guys, especially when using generously spec'd fans. Ask your local grow store for advice or post a question in the comments if you want help on your setup. Okay, I think that's quite enough CFMs for one day. Do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, will you please? It makes my cell phone go ping, and those pings are part of the joy in my otherwise pingless life. Look at it another way. Clicking on that big red button actually makes my pocket vibrate for just a fraction of a second, and I promise you it's brief enough not to arouse me in an improper way or make me feel overly self-important. So just do it. Use that ping power. Adios, amigos. See you soon.